when, like in my family, if it's like somebody invites you to a dinner party and they say, oh, come around at like 7, everyone knows that everyone's going to come at like 9.
Really?
Yeah.
But I would think, but what about not for professional things? I would think brown people,
I
your
don't
kind
know.
of brown people time for professional purposes would be early.
Not Pakistani, that's for sure. But
Really? You bunch of
yeah, Pakistan is not a
overachievers.
very no. Pakistan is in America, sure,
Right.
but not in Pakistan. I don't think. Oh, okay. Looks like we're up. Are we up? It's running. People are on. We can't
Are
see.
they on?
Yes. Yes. It's working.
Okay.
Okay, now you can start. Now you can say your intro.
We're going to start. Okay. In the culture wars, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Megan Daum and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, brave, and live streamed. This is a historic event.
Historic for sure.
Yeah, we're doing a live stream right now. People who are listening to this on the regular podcast, this will mean nothing to them, but we are in fact at this very moment doing a. We've got an audience. We've got a live studio audience of sorts.
Yeah. I'm seeing the chat. I mean, I'm not gonna look at it the whole time. I have to but I'm seeing it. It's there. They're like, oh yeah, you guys are live. Oops.
Okay.
Cool.
Right. So we're just going to have our normal conversation. And then if people have questions, I guess we're going to interrupt our conversations and address them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, it depends on how great the comments and or questions
yeah,
are.
you
Maybe we won't even address it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, the big news today is that people are really worried about Taylor Swift. Apparently she is a psyop. The whole relationship with Travis Kelce, I believe that's his name, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. That is a football team that is going to the Super Bowl.
What's a tight end? I mean, it sounds
it
sounds
doesn't sound
sexual.
Good. Doesn't sound good. It's a position in football.
Okay. And also and also a position.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this guy on Twitter named Owen Benjamin, or maybe his name is Benjamin.
Oh, I saw this one too. I was gonna read this one. Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to read it?
No, it's terrible. You should read it.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is only the latest in a string of such tweets. Okay. He asks, why would a rich famous guy marry a 34-year-old woman? If you started immediately, you might be able to have 2 kids. And she's publicly had sex with a ton of guys. Publicly. Despite her wealth, she's very low quality for any successful male. Just seems weird and almost like he's a gay guy. Why would a successful man want a middle-aged woman who's always on tour? Could it be because he's gay? Well, he is a tight end. So
that's where
this
guy
it
comes
from.
Something.
Yeah. Yeah. So Taylor Swift has been showing up in the stands in the stadium, cheering on her man, who seems like a very nice guy. He's very masculine and bearded and lumberjacky, and people are quite upset about this apparently. And I think it's very much in keeping with this recent fascination of mine, which is the sort of red/black pilled, very online right-wing guys who are obsessed with finding a milk maiden to be their life partner. And I think that they don't like it that Taylor Swift is sort of stealing the spotlight from her man.
I don't understand anything about this. I don't understand why anyone's talking about it. I think Taylor Swift is kind of boring in general. And now she's controversial, I guess.
Yeah, it's her whole brand.
Because she dares to be old and it's fine. And by old we mean 34.
She's 34.
34.
There's a lot of people saying she's mid.
Middle-aged.
Right. I mean, I hope she's not middle-aged. Depends on how you define that. Look,
There's another great tweet by Owen Benjamin. This is the one that I was
oh, the
referencing.
same guy, Owen Benjamin. Whoever this
Where,
guy
yeah.
is, he doesn't like
He
gays.
used to be
He's
called Sargon of Akkad. That's who I don't know why he
Oh,
was called
that's
that.
who that is.
What did he
He
do?
rebranded himself.
He was just like an internet anti-feminist. I think
I
that's what
think he was a kind. I could be wrong, but I think he might have been like a kind of GamerGate kind of guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Now the bells are ringing.
yeah.
Yes. And then at some point he unmasked, and now we know who he is. And it was better when he was masked. It's like Kiss, like the band members from Kiss. It's like when they took off all the makeup
Oh,
and then we saw their kind of
I
fugly
know.
faces. It was
We
like,
just
ooh, I don't know
realized
about
they're
that.
like up with people or something.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so he said, here's another tweet. Life expectancy is 72. 34 is literally middle-aged. Taylor Swift is a middle-aged woman with no children who works away from the home 340 days a year. She's not exactly a catch. And then he later reveals that my mom was 38 when she had me, but it's
Well,
obviously not ideal.
well, obviously not. There's some defects going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was another Taylor tweet from a couple of weeks ago, actually about a month ago now, by Abby Roth, her handle is classically Abby. She is Ben Shapiro's sister, and she appears to be an aspiring trad influencer. And she tweeted, "Can we all recognize that Taylor Swift is old, 34, never married, never had kids, still singing about broken hearts and dating? If you're coming home to an empty apartment at the end of the day, you can't convince me that money and fame alone are the recipe for success." Can you Taylor Swift's apartment must be so grim and depressing when she comes home every night.
I just think they should pick like a target that makes sense. Like she doesn't seem like an unhappy person. She is not old. She is super attractive. She is incredibly rich. Can we just pick we should pick somebody who actually makes us feel like, oh, it's important to have family and friends, and she has friends. Actually, she must have tons and
Oh
tons
my
of
gosh,
friends.
she has her
Fake friends,
all
maybe.
all the Swifties. She has I mean, she has a million fans. I mean, but I do actually think this is interesting because I don't think I'm going to give the most generous interpretation of this. I don't think they're saying she has no value. I think they're saying she has no value like in the traditional female sense. Like she doesn't have any her body count. I don't think her
But
body
that's
count's
always
necessarily
like
high. I mean, she's written about every single body that she has counted in a song. So,
but there
she does have
and
a lot of
some that I
songs.
think she hasn't. I think she writes about every guy she just
Yeah,
flirts with.
exactly. Even if she
I think
just
that's the
like
whole point
caught his eye.
of doing
Yeah.
it. Like, I think, if we found out like 40 years later, like actually she was married, she had a family the whole time, but all these public affairs
That
were
would be
just like this
amazing.
thing that she had to do for her career, it would make a lot of sense to me. But there are people who are so ultra famous, like who are beyond the requirements for everybody else,
Yeah, they
like, so
transcend
this
yes.
whole, oh, she's too old, she's to be a mother, she's failed in that sense. It's like she's not, she doesn't, these standards are not her standards. Like we can't talk
Well,
about it in these ways. It doesn't make sense.
I guess okay, but their argument would be she writes all these songs about how she's sad over all these breakups and all these guys screwed her over and she just wants love. And so therefore we are going to hold her to these standards. I mean, I do think that I give this Travis Kelsey props for dating her. This is a power couple, I
That's not,
guess.
what do you mean props? Like props as in you're so brave,
He's
or
stunning and
like
brave.
he's actually, but like he's actually gotten a catch?
Well, I think that it's like probably hard to be with somebody who is the bigger star. Like a lot of these football players, I mean, any athlete, you see these athletes and they will cut to the stands and they'll show their like beautiful girlfriend or wife cheering them on. And it's not usually somebody who's 50 times more famous than the athlete.
Yeah.
It is the ideal of like the woman cheering on her man and she's very like homespun and beautiful and trad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the paradigm. So it would be it is probably a lot. It would be extra, as the kids say, to have Taylor Swift as your girlfriend.
I bet it is really hard for her to find somebody. Like, I think at that level of fame, your pool is tiny. It's just
She's also
so
tall.
tiny. She's also tall.
She's
She has
got the
tall
tall
girl
girl problem
problems, and then famous
in
girls problems,
every
and then
way.
rich girl problems. Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, her
Yeah.
life does suck. Let's face it.
Yeah.
She probably comes home and her cat litter box is probably overflowing with cat turds and just grim.
Yeah. Nicki Minaj is also having like a kind of a weird time on Twitter, but that is different. And I haven't fully updated myself on what's happening. I think she is dating somebody who may be like a convicted sex offender. I don't want to. I think that there is something shady about what's happening, but and it looks like she's lost her mind a little bit.
Okay.
And she's been tweeting some crazy things and sharing
Oh.
some crazy things. I mean, on social media, maybe not on Twitter, but she's sort of losing it. Looks like publicly, so that's sad because I liked Nicki Minaj.
Oh, really?
I
I don't
mean,
have an
not
opinion on
her music. Her music was bad, but I like the idea of her. You remember when like there was a song Anaconda when it came out, or like even before it came out, and there was just like I think this just the lyrics were known or something like that, and all these feminist sites were like, yeah, it's like this anthem for women everywhere, and it turned out to be like one of those videos where like all it is women with their butts shaking the whole time, and that was pretty funny. That was a like fun little moment.
that's okay.
And she gave me that, so
nice. Well,
yeah.
I'm developing some theories about Taylor Swift, and I actually don't know that much about her. I don't know any of her songs. I'm inclined
None of them?
I'm inclined to dislike them. Well, I know "Shake It Off."
Mm-hmm.
That's from a really long time ago. But I think I need to work on this more. I'm just, just bear with me. I think that she is a social contagion akin to like gender dysphoria. She is her audience are teenage girls who have all decided that this is the best music ever. This is incredibly deep. Her songwriting is amazing. This is real artistry. And that is so clearly not the case. I mean, Taylor Swift could be, I'm sure I'm going to get pushback here, but I feel like this could have been generated like AI. She's kind of like AI, but she's not AI. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of a K-pop sort of thing. She's like maybe a couple notches above K-pop.
I think you're gonna get pushback from me a little bit.
Okay, go. Okay.
So here's what it is. I don't think, and now I'm not super familiar with her music either, and I don't understand the Swiftie situation. I don't understand why anyone wants to watch live music actually, because it's just like a terrible experience.
Yeah, I mean, a Taylor Swift concert would be
sounds like a nightmare. You know, just a bunch of screaming like what teenagers, and hopefully
like
right, they're probably
they're
not like they're older
like
than that.
School. Oh, some of they go with their moms.
Some of them are some of them are older than that. Some of them are like my age. It's like Harry Potter fans. Like too many Harry Potter fans are like 35.
Oh yeah.
You know, like the most insane Harry Potter fan is going to be like a 35-year-old woman. Anyway, so I actually think that she is rare in that she does write her own songs, or many of them, or most of them.
Some of them /
But nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that. Like everybody else just gets, somebody to write things for them. I mean, they're entirely fake in a way that she isn't. And she'll do live performances where it's just her and the guitar, and you can tell that she has genuine talent. Like she has a nice voice. She knows how to play an instrument. She writes her own songs. I mean,
she knows a couple of chords, and she sings
but that puts
better
her
than she used to.
That puts her so far above any other modern musician, except for who's our fave, our queen, the big one. What's her name? Plays the flute.
Lizzo.
No,
she's no Lizzo. That's
she's
no
Lizzo. But
okay, well, I mean, obviously, yeah, we've talked about this before. Obviously, there are lots of musicians making new music all the time who are genuinely talented, but yeah, okay. If you're talking
No,
about
but you're right. You're right
major
that
pop
there's something
stars,
about it.
it's sort of like it's been decided that this music is good and deep and important, and everyone just goes along with it. And
It's
it
not
just,
everyone. It's like young girls. Young girls are like that though. Like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
they're
But
like
why?
primed for a social
Yes,
contagion.
that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
her audience is young girls, and so it's young girls have made her, have elevated her. They have made her as
they've
famous and
crowned her.
successful as she
Yeah.
is, but they have done it because of this social contagion effect. That's what I'm thinking.
I think she also speaks to their experience. Like what you're calling as pretty basic shit, like these very simple emotions. These are also their emotions, and she speaks from this first person perspective about the ups and downs of her life, and her
Yeah,
songs they're very autobiographical, and it's interesting that she focuses on heartbreak so much. I mean, this is like a young woman,
not young
problem,
anymore.
not that young.
Uh,
34,
okay,
middle-aged.
but is it really true that no major pop star is writing and doing personal stuff? I mean,
I think
this is the
I think it
oldest
is
story
true.
in the world. Really,
Sad.
there's nobody. There's
I don't know
no.
if nobody.
Are
You
there
can't.
any men? It seems like there are
Nobody. No,
men.
probably there's somebody.
There are male singer songwriters. Are there not?
Yeah, but they don't have to dance on stage.
No, I mean,
Like they don't have to. There's so much they don't have to do. But Taylor Swift has to dance. Taylor Swift has to look hot. Taylor Swift has to do a lot of other things. You can't expect her to also write her
I
own
mean, there
songs.
have been in the past female singer songwriters that can do stadium concerts and don't have to dance in sequin leotards on stage.
Yeah, but now you do.
I guess we
now
can't.
You
Okay,
well,
all right,
that's a valid.
that's a valid point. So then it is total sexism.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
this kind of music sucks. What's amazing about like modern music is that you have like Taylor Swift, and then you have so many like interesting like new like artists who are experimenting a lot with like electronic music. Like it's just so much. It's accessible to the kind of average person. I mean, you wouldn't quite be average because you have to have access still to a good bit of software and technology. But I think if you're just a creative young person, you can create songs and get them online.
Oh
And
yeah.
so from that indie perspective, it's incredible what's happening.
Oh, I know.
But
There's
it's very
amazing.
it's not super visible though. Like
No, well,
the
they have
indie
their
phenomenon.
audiences. I mean, there are new artists that are on YouTube that have very, very big followings, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll play their music and they'll talk to you and stuff like that. But yeah, it is a different economy. So anyway, okay, we do have some chats. We want people to ask us questions. Somebody has already asked a question.
Is it a
hate
good
this.
question
I
though?
hate this question. Well,
No.
okay, how am I going to pronounce my name? I do. This is really, really a problem. Daum. I know I'm being really confusing. I don't know.
Wait,
I think
what's
I'm
the
gonna.
question? What's the question?
Okay, do you plan on switching from Dom to Daum again in the future? Inquiring minds want to know if you've settled on a pronunciation.
Mm.
I think I'm gonna go back to Dom because that is actually how most of my relatives that are not my immediate family pronounce it, and I only have one immediate family member
I thought
who's
we were gonna
alive.
go with Megan X.
I know. Yeah.
I think that works. I think you should just do Megan
Megan
X.
X. It sounds like Malcolm X. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Ibrahim Kent X
Oh
Kendi. You
yeah.
just but
Megan
now it
Meg
has this like Twitter like
yeah, edgelord kind
connection
of thing.
too. It's
Yeah.
like Elon Musk keeps naming everything X, and you can just pretend like maybe you're part of that.
Yeah, or maybe just a number. Maybe just my social security number I'll just say out loud every time. That'll be my last name.
Mm,
So,
okay.
yeah, that's the answer to that question. So, yeah, as people should ask questions. Oh,
Somebody
someone
asked
wants to
about
know.
what kind of music do they like. Nobody wants to
Oh,
hear about my music
I
tastes.
do.
Do
Do you
you?
have any? You don't want to go to any live shows, so
I don't want to go to
that's
any live shows. It's all over the place. I don't have any like
that's good.
specific genre that I'm all that interested in. Um, it's not Taylor Swift stuff. It's not pop.
No.
Not. I mean, but I can enjoy it. Like I can be drunk and be in a dancing mood and be
Mhm.
interested in that, and I don't mind, and I'm not above it.
Mhm.
Um, like, there was a period where Lady Gaga was really everywhere when I was in a club hopping kind of age.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but I
Okay.
don't. I don't.
I like a lot of the sort of new grass singer-songwriters, uh, like Sarah Jarosz and Nickel Creek, those guys, Aoife O'Donovan, I think that's how
Mm.
you pronounce her name.
Mm.
I like very high quality musicianship because I grew up in this crazy musical family, of which I'm the only non performer,
Mm.
although I have a scary uh, ear. I can hear like the littlest out of tune thing in like the
Uh-oh.
background of music. That's
Mm.
I am autistic when it comes to music. Actually, it's
Mm-hmm.
very unfortunate. So,
Hmm.
uh,
We should make playlists,
it would be, you
and
know
it could
what?
be like a subscriber only perk.
Maybe, yeah.
But I don't know who's gonna like my
Anyway,
stuff.
okay. So, do we have what else is on our minds?
Oh, so many things. We have so many things to talk about
A
today.
lot.
Uh, there was this amazing poll that came out on the global gender divide. The article was on Financial Times, right?
In the Financial Times, yeah.
FT,
In the FT. That's how you say
FT.
it. If you hang out at Davos, you read in the FT.
I don't think I've ever have I. I mean, they're just so paywalled. It's so hard to get access to this article for some reason. But everybody on Twitter was talking about it, and for good reason because it was terrifying. There was, for those of you who don't know, this is the um, an article called "A New Global Gender Divide is Emerging," and they take a look at I think it's a Gallup poll, right? Like
Yeah,
Gallup
it is
data.
a Gallup poll.
Yeah, they look at Gallup data of how decades after decades where the sexes were each spread roughly equally across liberal and conservative worldviews. Women aged 18 to 30 are now 30 percentage points more liberal than their male contemporaries. That gap took just 6 years to open up, and they show all these different countries, including Germany and South Korea,
Yeah,
and they
Poland.
show this
Yeah.
like just insane, deeply worrying divide. And it seems like in many of the cases, it's the women that are just drifting, like just extremely leftward. The guys, and by these is the young guys, they seem to be either mostly staying in the same place or occasionally also like drifting the other way. So
Yeah.
it's very worrying, and all there was all this conversation as to what's happening and why it's happening. So that was pretty fascinating. So what do you think, Megan? Are you worried?
Yeah. Am I worried? It's not like the highest on my worry list. I mean, this was an interesting. I'm just going to read this one paragraph from the piece. He writes, "The Me Too movement was the key trigger."
Mm.
And he's talking about, I don't know if he's South Korea actually has a huge, that, like you just said, that was a gigantic chasm.
Mm-hmm.
But he writes, the Me Too movement was the key trigger, and presumably he's talking about the West as well, giving rise to fiercely feminist values among young women who felt empowered to speak out against long-running injustices. The spark found especially dry tinder in South Korea, where gender inequality remains stark and outright misogyny is common. I mean, I wonder if the Me Too and the sort of memification of feminist politics just sort of made women more political, or just kind of politics was closer to it was part of their self conception in a way that it hadn't been before. And so
Mm.
they're just, I don't know, it's almost like it is a sort of vehicle of style
Mm-hmm.
to be, very progressive.
Yeah. Ruxandra, is that my? I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. Ruxandra.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, on Twitter, I want to find her handle. I don't know where it is actually. Ruxandra Teslo. She's on Twitter. She posted an article that's also on her Substack, I believe, about what she thinks is happening, and she had some interesting thoughts as a woman who is Gen Z herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how she thinks women are more empathetic on average, and conservatives are perceived as mean and bad and hateful. And so this is an aesthetic thing, as you were noting, Megan. Um, and then she also talks about women. Yes, women are gravitating to these online communities, but also male communities also exist, and they're isolated and kind of gross. And she calls it the intellectual goon caves, sordid communities characterized by anger and bitterness.
Yeah.
An example of such a goon cave is a right-wing anonymous community on Twitter. If you have spent any amount of time lurking there, you are a sane person. You will come away with the feeling that it's a deeply insalubrious place. I don't know how to pronounce
insalubrious.
This is a crazy word.
Insalubrious, like incel lubrious. Yeah, she had an excellent thread about this.
Yes.
Or it's one long tweet. And I was really glad that she coined this term goon cave. I don't know if it's her coinage or it came from somewhere else, but this is what I've been describing for the last couple of weeks here. Like these guys are always on my feed. I don't know why, because I don't follow them. It's these anonymous, very red-pilled accounts. And again, the people who are calling Taylor Swift mid and, empty egg carton and that kind of thing. And again, I don't know how many of them there are actually. I mean, it's a very online thing. And I mean, she makes the point, I think it was her, that it's not just online, because it's creeping up in the real world. In some ways. She says she says you might dismiss this kind of stuff as just an online phenomenon, but I think it's quickly percolating into the mainstream. For instance, see this tweet so then she quotes this tweet from UCLA Republicans, Bruin Republicans at UCLA. This is a blue check account. How do so many women at UCLA manage to be ugly, fat, ran through, and liberal all at the same time? And all of this while the majority of men here are homosexuals. Sad. UCLA. I mean, I don't know how seriously to take this tweet.
Yeah. I wouldn't take it too seriously, but she's not wrong that there's something about this and it's disgusting and it exists. I don't know whether this explains it, because it's not as if gross men didn't exist always, like this is kind of always been a phenomena. And I'm trying to think of like when I was young and very online, lonely little nerdy kid. It's not as if I didn't see my share of like disgusting, like horribly disgusting stuff. It just wasn't, I guess it wasn't so anti-woman, but it was pretty anti-woman and racist and everything. Like it was, just a time where it was cool to be. I mean, maybe this exists for young men. There's a period where you have to be an edgelord and you have to say horrible stuff, and this is you becoming an individual and throwing off the shackles of polite society or something. I think it's just a phase that
separating from the mother.
Right. I think there's a phase that young men go through. What I think what might be interesting now is that they're not growing out of it. And that's not, I've been thinking about it a lot in terms of, the two examples of the male role models that Ruxandra was bringing up with Andrew Tate and Donald Trump.
Yeah, we have a question about this actually in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
The Andrew Tate.
What's the question?
So where do Andrew Tate and his ilk fit into the divergence in young people's political principles?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Andrew Tate is causing anything, really. I think he's just he's a symptom, just like Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is mostly a symptom of things, and I don't know if he causes much at all, except to maybe, increase the tendencies that he's a part of anyway, that he's a representation of. But what's interesting about it is that you look at Andrew Tate and he's what, a convicted
he's
sex trafficker,
is he in prison?
I mean, he was in prison for a while, right. for something hard, for like enslaving and like tricking women into like into, I guess, sex slavery. I'm not sure about the sort of details of it, but it was definitely not amazing. And
it wasn't you didn't just steal something from CVS is what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not just that he's a misogynist, it's that he just objectifies women openly, brags about it. But that's always hasn't that always existed. I think what's interesting about it is that there is no counter to Andrew Tate. That you have these male role models who just act like young men, you know? Like this is what a 12-year-old boy thinks is super masculine, you know, to be like Andrew Tate and just fucking a bunch of hoes and cigars and
Right.
driving these fast cars. But what's interesting is that what we lack entirely is patriarchs, like men of substance
Yeah. Well,
and
leaders.
strength,
Leaders.
leaders,
Yeah.
but also fathers. It's interesting that of all the things Donald Trump is, he's not a great father, not known to be, and that's not something he's prioritizing in his life. And you don't see him as that, you see him as kind of this fuck you to society, but you don't get the feeling that you're going to be protected by him in a way that maybe you would have with an elder statesman, in like a true, like
Yeah.
idealistic patriarchal sense. And I think that's just what's so interesting about somebody like Andrew Tate is that he's just this this man who will never graduate into fatherhood. um and he's happy with that. He's proud of that, that he's just living in this free life.
But
He doesn't have any responsibilities towards anybody.
okay. Well, okay, sorry. Finish your thought because I
Yeah,
have
I mean, I just think that it's interesting how little thought that we're giving to not just like, okay, young men are like, where are they going? They're disappearing. They're playing too much video games or whatever. I think that what's happening is this really important role of being a father is being denied to them in various ways. Maybe because they're not getting to the point where they can offer a woman enough that they can settle down, or
right.
maybe they're getting lost along the way in like a million different pitfalls, or they're just not that valued in that role as a whole is
Yeah, I
not
think they
as
would say
valued.
they can't get a girl. I think they would say that women reject them. But there is a whole like ecosystem of thought leader, business bros, entrepreneurial influencers that are all about like the wife and the kids and this is what matters and the best ROI you can get on your business is
Which is
having an
why I
amazing
I kind
wife.
of I as annoying as those guys might be, I actually think they're just doing people a service to the extent that they are encouraging the fatherhood role. I
Right.
think it's a responsible way of being, and I think it creates a lot of change in men, it's an important change. It's important to their sense of self. And I
Yeah, but
we're
those guys are in the same world as the edgelordy incel guys. I mean, I see them
What do you
interacting
mean?
with each other. I think that some of those, like, look at my family, here I've got 8 kids and here's my wife at home and like, I 10x'd my business yesterday, kind of thing. Like then I see the, super red pilled anonymous right wing young guy accounts responding to them like, you go, bro, sort of thing. So it is
Hmm.
this kind of like Jordan Peterson effect where, these guys are. I'm not disagreeing with you that they are good influences, but it's just I find it fascinating that like this whole swirl has to do with like extremely traditional values and like a romanticization of a sort of society that never existed.
Right, right,
And it's like this it's just this like gestalt of fetishized um fantasy.
right. But it's not so. It, it's not terrible to have ideals, even if they are
No.
impossible to enact in real life. And maybe it's just it's impossible to have the trad wife the way that that this is a fantasy that women can never, like a real woman could never reach. But I think that that's clear to you the second you actually start a family. The second you run into like you actually start moving towards that fantasy and achieving that fantasy, you run into what reality actually is, what it means to be in love with another human who has thoughts and desires of their own. And I think that it promotes a lot of good, responsible change in people.
For sure, but they can't even get there if they are obsessed with body count. And
yeah, but I think it's cope. It's cope. Like, I don't think that I don't think they really care about body count. It's just like, oh, she said, you know how like when a woman rejects you, then you're like, well, she's ugly anyway.
Oh yeah,
I never wanted her. I think so much of it is just they feel a lot of resentment and bitterness and anger, and some of that is totally understandable.
Yeah.
I think we are setting up young men to fail, and they're not stupid. They see that, and meanwhile society coddles young women all the time, and then while they're being coddled and they're doing well, and they're making like good deals of money, they have jobs, they have more degrees than these young men, then it says, okay, also women are victims.
Yeah, and we're gonna shit on men. Yeah, well, yeah. I saw I don't know if Razib Khan said this or this was in one of the replies to something he had tweeted. It was referred to as like this kind of red pill gross misogyny is like an inverse meme to the toxic masculinity feminist messaging. Like those women were very, very active online. They came out of Tumblr, they came out of that whole stuff maybe 10-12 years ago, and just it got completely absorbed into the culture. Like it's okay to say terrible things about men and to make fun of them and treat them like shit, and post snap pictures of them manspreading on the subway and humiliate them and talk humiliatingly about your sexual experiences online. Basically treat men this way because you're ostensibly punching up. So that really, set the stage for this kind of rhetoric and this kind of behavior. And it comes out of the same thing. It comes out of grievance. But, it's interesting that the female version of it was, accepted by the mainstream. Like those women who were doing that got book contracts and became columnists in newspapers and things. And these guys are just getting nowhere.
Right. But I think that is the way that the culture, the difference in how the culture treats female cope and male cope, both, stemming from a lot of bitterness and resentment at the opposite sex, I think has a lot to do with how women behave around other women and how men, treat weak men. I think like men don't want to help the incel losers. They're like, go like men of stature, men who have power or who have a good family. They're not like, oh, you poor thing. Women feel that way about other women, So who was the writer whose fat phobia column we were
Kate Mann, reading,
right? Like she can write about that, and she can get a lot of sympathy from women who have never been fat. She can read about that, so she can write about that, and we think, oh, poor Kate. And we're interested in hearing what she has to say and validating her and everything. I don't think this is a uniformly good thing. I think in some ways it's a good thing. It's good that women, create women's shelters and take care of women and take these social problems seriously. But also the whole women's discourse is super copy because of it. You just have there's no reality to so much of the conversation there. Like, what do you actually need to do to be happy? What do you actually need to do to, have a good, healthy relationship? I don't think that this information is easy for women to find at all, because cope is everywhere. It's just everywhere. And it's validating the worst instincts among young women.
Okay. All right. I'm fascinated by the concept of cope. Maybe we should devote a whole episode to that sometime. But I mean, cope is what you're dealing with, right? I mean, are you defining cope as like
coping? It's like coping. It's what you are using to cope with a situation, but it's not like it's basically a fantasy, a lie you're telling yourself so that you can get over this other injury, like narcissistic injury, I guess.
Or your circumstances.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, cope is healthy. I mean,
to a degree, but you need to move up. But you need
pathologized,
right? But so like it's the whole. I'm overweight and this is terrible and the society should treat me better. I'm overweight. This is terrible. Society should help me, get more in shape, or I should help myself get, I mean, there's a difference in who you're ascribing blame for your predicament, whatever it is. And I think that's what's harmful about cope, when it doesn't, it can kind of lead you astray if it's saying, no, look, this is the problem is actually this thing. That's not you. And so now you can feel better about yourself.
So, but I mean, is cope like, well, I haven't met anybody, so I'm just going to focus on my career, and that's okay, and I'm going to make the best of this situation?
I don't think that's cope. Yeah, I don't think that's cope, because so long as you recognize the reality of your problem and the source of your problem, so long as that's it's a true source and you're recognizing it and you're not looking too deeply into it, but this is why it's happening, and now I'm figuring out a way to handle it. A cope is something that's like not true, it's just something you're saying.
So if you're stating fact, then it's not cope.
I think so. Yeah. I think cope is when you point to something else as the reason for all your problems. Here's a real problem. It's not that I'm a loser incel, like addicted to porn or whatever. Like it's not my porn addiction. It's her.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what
okay.
So I looked into this a little bit, because just this extreme chasm in the past 6 years of young women in just going to this real radical cultural left. I was interested in it, in that one, it seems to be, something has happened to make it just skyrocket. And I think that there was a lot of interesting discussion about, well, it's phones, it's being online, these discourses that are super isolated of women, queening each other, into insane politics. I think all of that is the case. But this trend has been going on for a while. And what's interesting is that women used to be more conservative than men on average. So I looked it up a little bit and uncharacteristically did some research. That happens sometimes. Can you believe it?
Oh, that excuses your lateness. I know you're only ever late because you're doing research.
Because I'm always working. So I found from a paper from 2000 in the International Political Science Review. This is called The Developmental Theory of the Gender Gap: Women and Men's Voting Behavior in Global Perspective. And I liked it because it looked at data from the World Values Surveys, which is just these crazy lengthy surveys that are done every year, and anyone can access them. You guys can access them and get this data set, pure data. And if you're very statistically minded and you kind of analysis like this, you can poke around with it and play with all the different variables. So you might have to pay for some of it, but I remember I accessed a lot of it once.
Yeah. Sounds worth paying for.
I mean, I did get at some point, but you have to know how to work with data, which I can kind of do it. Or maybe ChatGPT could do it now for us.
You should offer
some kind of GPT could do it. Some kind of Anyway, this is a paper by Ronald Inglehart and Pippa Norris, who are gods in the political opinion, science world. I've been assigned and read many books and papers by them, individually and also together. So they looked at studies from, they looked at many countries and many decades from post-war era, basically onwards. I think they looked at this over 60 countries. And they started their analysis with what we knew about women in the post-war era, but that's not the information available. The information available, I think, starts from the 1980s, which is when the World Value Survey started, going around everywhere. But evidently in the post-war era, they talk about how it was just kind of taken as a matter of fact that women were conservative. It was like established, this was established orthodoxy that in Western democracy women proved more right-wing than men. That's how they like start off. And it was thought, even prior to women getting the right to vote, that when they would have it, they would just be they would be conservative, and that's what that block would look like. Which is really,
Is
really
that why they
interesting.
gave them the right to vote?
I don't know. That's very interesting. Um, but they look at so they try to like analyze this a little bit, and see what's going on and what might be the cause, and whether this is something that we see only in Western countries, like Western European countries, or only in the United States. And then you can say, okay, there's something particular about this country. If you see it broader than that, then it is a broader phenomena. And they find that it's happening in post-industrial societies. So this was a survey. This paper was published in 2000. So I think that if they did it again, they would find that it has spread. The women's leftward drift has spread to other countries that used to be like formerly kind of developing and now have developed considerably. Um, and we would see that suddenly women start to shift leftward, and there is a lack of alignment between men and women on these issues. I thought that was really interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
1980s, they say, is when the women moving towards the Democrats, and this was really the key in the United States of the gender gap. That women and men were kind of like same-ish for a while, after the post-war era, and then these women started separating in the 1980s onward.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if abortion has a lot to do with this, the sexual revolution,
Mhm.
and then, the
Yeah.
relevance of being able to obtain an abortion and birth
Mhm.
control. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously it was always a thing, but I don't know. I don't know. Actually, I would be very curious. I'm sure people are knowing the answer to this and frustrated that I don't know. But like, the history of abortion, I, before it wasn't really that politicized. My understanding is that it certainly was not like a pet issue of the Christian right until the 80s. Actually, this is to your point. I think this makes sense. Like if you think about the rise of like the moral majority and right wing evangelical Christian political influence, that was very much the 80s, the Reagan era, and that had a lot to do with women's reproductive freedoms and
Mm.
such. So
Mm.
I would bet that that's a big driver.
Yeah, I think they find that it is. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but I think it is just also broader than that. Also, than that,
Yeah, yeah.
because they said that we would. Hold on.
We have some questions too. We should
Oh
probably
no, we should have.
be
Okay.
answering.
All
So
right. What questions?
um, I'm trying to see if it'll be relevant. I mean, somebody did ask: is the left welcoming for men?
Hmm.
If you're a certain kind of man, if you make the right kind of noises, yeah, wouldn't you say? I mean,
I don't think anywhere is welcoming for men. It's just like a one bad choice or another. It depends on
well,
how you want to live your life. Do you want to be able to climb like the status hierarchies of proper and polite society? If so, then put on put on that one the colors of that team and say what you're going to
mm-hmm,
say.
mm-hmm,
Mumble the party line
right. Go through the
and
catechism.
just right, but there's no because there's I don't think there's a way for men to win. And that's part of the
Oh,
problem. And I think that's what these young guys have noticed, which is why there's a sense of like, well, fuck you.
yeah. Well, we should say that we do have a man who sent us a donation. Aaron Smithy sent us $1.99.
Oh my
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Thank you.
How do we
Look
divide
at
that up
that.
between the two of us?
I didn't know we
That's
could
an
do that.
odd number. Yeah. I mean, that is going to pay
I
for
think
like
I should get most of it.
you get. I know that's going to pay for like what 45 seconds of childcare. That's huge for us.
I think. I will take because I have to add in price in the childcare. Well, you have to price in the dog care, which you do, which I'm alarmed and amazed by.
Yeah, the dog care is not as much. I realize I gave you a number about the dog care the other day, but that was actually the overnight fee. That was the 24-hour care, not the.
There's no 24-hour care that I can access.
No, you should.
My kid.
No, you need to take your kids to the dog camp, and they can run around on pea-stained astroturf and have a grand old time. Anyway, thank you for that. Big thanks.
Yeah, cool. We can get money from people.
Yeah,
in so many
somebody
different
else,
ways.
especially if we take their questions.
Okay.
You don't have to answer this if this is too much of a non sequitur. But what do you think about this cultural trend to constantly self-diagnose mental health issues? And what do we think this does for folks who are actually experiencing real problems? Well, this is the gentrification of mental illness concept that Freddie DeBoer has talked about. Yeah, I think it's bizarre. Abigail Schreier has a book coming out about this actually this spring, just about this like mental health, just making mental health struggles central to your identity, and constantly turning to therapists. I don't know if this is a point that Abigail made, but I was just hearing somebody talk about this, like the idea that if you have a problem, the thing to do is like call your therapist. The fact that there are services like BetterHelp, which is all about having a therapist on call that you can just chat with them at any time if you have a problem. The idea that that is the way to handle a moment of stress or discomfort is so telling.
Yeah.
About where we are right now as a society.
I think it's fascinating. I think we'll be looking at this as like this very particular age, this like age of like the psychological man, where we had this sense of self and identity, and so much of it was tied down to modern psychology's conception of who we are and why we are what we are. It's incredible. I think we should do actually a whole episode on this because it's completely crazy. But what do I think this does for folks who are actually experiencing real problems? I don't. Well, it's interesting because I don't know if like anybody's being helped. They're not being helped. Regular people aren't being helped with this like self-diagnosis. I don't know. What do you think, Megan? What happens to?
I mean, some people have real problems. There was a piece of the New York Times the other day about a guy with schizophrenia, really terrible situation, young guy.
But they're being accepted, right? Like they're being like it's more like we don't.
Well, he couldn't get help. The point is he couldn't get services. He was on the street, and he had parents, and they they were afraid of him. He was violent, and these parents were committed. Like they would do anything for him. And it was just all about like what a desperate situation it is, and like mental health services had tried, but he didn't want to be on medication because he was paranoid. He thought his phones were being tapped. He wouldn't eat anything because he thought everything was poisoned. And so it's a really, really difficult thing to deal with. And other than, committing people against their will, it was very interesting. A lot of the comments were people who were actually in the mental health profession saying, I hate to say it, but committing people involuntarily and forcing them on medication is probably the least bad option. But yeah, I don't know that addresses what the initial question is. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Was there ever a time where we were good with dealing with people with mental health issues?
No, they were in
was there ever
asylums?
Right, and that was horrible. But I think like we've never been good about it. Like what does a good mental health system look like? Like we can think about idealistically what might make it up, but that's just it's a theory, and it's not really based in too much of what is actually goes on anywhere or can go on anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean in like third world countries, there are ways in which I think the mental health, like the way that mental health is kind of addressed, might be a little bit better. In that, in some countries, it's seen as it's a, you know, they have, it's not really a mental
They're a
health
god.
thing.
They just decide they're a god. They
The
worship
person will
them. They
decide they're
become the
God, and
head of the
everybody else will
temple.
decide that they are being possessed. They're possessed by demons, you know? And so people can do really horrible things to you if they think you're being possessed by demons. Maybe they need to beat the shit out of you, and that's how the demon will go away. Um, or maybe, you know, they just need to, they say certain things and give you like a holy book and see what happens. And there's just all these ways of dealing with it, that are not medication. Um, but I think that aside from that, the treatment angle, the social support that exists in societies with tighter, I guess, more traditional networks is, I think, much more beneficial for people with any kind of problem, um, than I think what they experience here with a much more atomized family structure. You know, there's no extent, we don't really have extended families that like live close by and can support each other all the time. You know, they say this about children, and I think that it's the same with elderly and the mentally ill, that these are, you know, members of your families and communities who are a great handicap to the people who love them and who are related to them. And it's just a luck of the draw that you get, you know, somebody who's just going to be, who's going to have like great needs, and you can't provide because it's just you and your husband, or, you know,
Yeah.
maybe this is your sibling and your parents are dead and that's, you're the
Yeah, I
only
mean, I
one, and
know
how are you
people
going to
in
take
that
care of this person?
situation.
So you,
I,
I mean, you had the whole extended, you know, you had the whole network to help ease the burden. You know, it made things easier from that, in that respect. I know this one
maybe
woman
I would be
who,
very I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious what, like, in a super developing world situation, what they would do with like a profoundly schizophrenic, violent person. I
I
mean,
mean,
I
they might be,
suspect they might
I mean,
just
I don't think
send
that
them out
they
off into
would,
the wilderness.
they wouldn't just, I don't know if they would, because it depends on the religion, I guess, I suppose. But I know in like Islam, you can't just like kill them or hurt them, or, you know, you will, I mean, maybe it depends on like what the folklore is in addition to the religion itself. But um I knew this woman, and I don't know if I talked about her on this podcast before. I didn't know her like directly too well, but she was in like the support groups that I was helping to run. And she was this deeply disturbed person, just deeply disturbed, could not take care of herself, and was a huge burden on anybody who would get close to her and try to help her. Basically, like, she would just she could not walk away, you know. She would just, and she would ask for more and more and more and more, and she needed so much because she just couldn't hold on a job. She couldn't manage, her life. And, you know, her life was, you know, her talking about, oh, I need help, people helping her, and them going sick of it, getting sick of it, and just feeling like, I can't do this anymore. I can't give her more money. I can't give her more time. I can't give her, you know, more space in my house or whatever. Just, and, you know, and she burned through a lot of bridges. You know, and I'm not blaming her because I don't know what was going on in her head, and I don't know what she actually needed, but just that those social like bridges were just burn, 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 burn. And, you know, I remember thinking that if she had family, and she didn't, right? These were like ex-Muslims who didn't have family, supporting them. Like, if she had family, then, you know, I think she would have had something that was much more stable, you know. And I, maybe that's romanticizing it, and of course not all families, but it is also true that when you are in a position like that, where you have somebody who's, you know, you have a kid who has, you know, mentally handicapped, and is going to be your kid forever, you know.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, this is my sibling, forever. They have a mental illness or whatever, but I feel a duty to take care of them. I remember thinking that if she had her family, that she would have had more assistance, more help. Anyway, she ended up getting medically assisted suicide. She was in Canada. She got
Oh
suicide under the
wow.
MAID
With
program.
MAID?
Yeah, and I read
When was
about it.
this?
This was like maybe 2 years ago. But I read about it when that all these like profiles of maid work was coming with people who are not terminally ill, because she's not terminally ill.
Right.
But she applied as just like, I can't live this way anymore, and I have no quality of life. And she was, you know, in an interesting kind of person, but she was also she had a lot of needs.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. It was a difficult case, but I remember thinking that if she had her family networks, she would have had something much more stable than what exhausted friends could provide, or just well-meaning strangers and charities and all these things, because eventually she would just spaz out on them and burn that bridge,
Yeah.
whatever.
Maybe.
And now,
But
anyway, she passed
wow.
away.
Yeah.
And I read about it,
Yeah.
and it was like shocking.
Although, I mean, people who do, it is shocking that MAID is medical assistance in dying program in Canada. If people aren't
It's a
familiar,
euthanasia, like
yeah.
voluntary.
They do allow for mental illness is on the list of things they'll consider, and same with the Dignitas clinic in Switzerland. I think too. I read a couple. Nora Vincent, who we talked about when we first started the podcast, she died, assisted suicide in Switzerland at that clinic, and all they said was that she'd struggled with depression. So there you
That
go.
is so
But
hard
she
to
does
take,
have family.
though.
But like a lot of those people, people who do that, most of them do have families.
Yeah,
somehow,
well,
that
I
they have
think that
alienated.
it depends on, it's of
And
course,
it must
right?
be
Like it's
so
sometimes even
at the
family
end of
can't do it.
right.
And we don't know. I don't really know the details of what happened with her family. Like maybe it was all due to leaving religion or what. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I just think that it is true that family is willing to put up with greater burdens than strangers can, or well, even the most well-meaning, you know,
Yeah.
uh, uh, people will not put up with what a family might provide you. But it's, of course, it's, not perfect. But it's horrible
No.
to see poor people, like applying for maid, and then you think, okay, well, they could definitely
Well,
use.
we're not going to have to apply for MAID because we have more donations.
Oh my god.
Gene Strumbos gave us $3.99. So now that is like, how many minutes of daycare is that?
Guys, with this like odd number donations, I mean, we're
Okay,
gonna
well,
quibble over this.
hang on
cent.
to it because wait for it. Sean McGonigal sent us $10.
Wow. Okay.
This
Thank
is
you for
great.
the even number also. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
that. Now we won't have to.
We're seriously grateful. We should do this every time. Why have we been doing the podcast with the old way with nobody paying us throughout it? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I think we were all just worried that, what if I have to pass gas and then we're live and then everybody hears it?
Yeah, but we get to buy gas now.
Right.
Okay, here's
exactly.
a question. Do Special Place in Hell fans have a nickname like Swifties? Yes, they do. Do you remember we discussed this?
Speds.
Speds.
Was it Speds? I feel like is that rude?
Is that going to get us in trouble?
I don't care if it gets us in trouble, but like,
it's mean.
Is it mean? Yeah.
I think it's kind of mean, but I don't know. It might be on brand for us. Speds
I'm okay with being mean to our audience. I'm just not okay with being mean to, like,
well, they are
the true Speds.
We're Speds. Yeah.
How about Spuds?
Spuds? Yeah. Well, if you guys think of a name for yourselves, please volunteer it. We have some more questions.
No, they're gonna find something they're gonna find something flattering, so we can't let them do it.
Okay, yeah, don't flatter yourselves, please. Only flatter us. Are either of you filling in for Jesse Single on Bar Pod during his book sabbatical?
He's taking a book sabbatical? He's writing another book? Oh
what do you mean? There's a party that we weren't invited to? Thanks a lot.
Every song.
I didn't get I did not get.
They would never invite us. I mean, maybe they would invite you. They would invite you. You are very.
They would invite you.
You are like sometimes like people will, like I'll be reading just like something and your name will come up and it'll be like, I'm like, oh, like that's with Megan Dom. I was reading about the Heresy Press opening up, and it was they were talking about like it's affiliated with these names, like these big names, like this person, this one, Megan Dom.
I know, but you were on some. You were on trigonometry. That kind of.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm so much of an online person compared to your establishment creds.
Wow, why'd they invite her? They invited you. They came in person and everything. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're not filling in for Jesse, although we would both be good. You know what? They should just get Katie should go on vacation too, and we should just the two of us should just do Blocked and Reported in
How
addition to
about
this
it's like
podcast.
Katie's dog and your dog, and
Oh,
that's it,
she
and nobody
wanted
else's.
Katie wanted her to gay breed her dog Moose with Hugo. I mean, they could get a
Okay, how do you
surrogate.
do that?
Well, we discussed it actually when she came on The Unspeakable. They would have to
Okay.
get so if Moose and Hugo wanted to be gay dads together, gay dog dads, we'd have
Uh-huh.
to hire a surrogate. We would have to get egg donor from another dog that would be a good, and then they would have to mix up Hugo and Moose's sperm, and then we would have to do the embryo, and then we had to put it in another dog surrogate,
Oh,
gestational
okay.
surrogate, and
That's too
then
much.
I don't know, but then it would still be only one of I don't know,
Yeah, and then it
but
would be clear who's like pup
I
it
don't
was,
know.
who the
Yeah,
who the
but
puppy
Hugo's
daddy.
neutered. Hugo's neutered, so
Okay, so it's
this
not
is
going
all
to be
just a big
him. Oh my god,
ruse.
so that's ridiculous.
I
No, yeah,
know. I
there's no
know.
point in
Yeah.
doing it. It's
Okay. Have speaking of fertility, Kat Rosenfield recently opened up about her fertility struggles. Oh, I didn't know that.
oh,
She would be an
she
excellent
did.
guest on that topic and much more. Somebody says
Mm.
agreed. Kat would be a good guest on this pod. She's been a guest on the Unspeakable. So yeah, we love Kat. Kat is one of these people that is at the absolute top of her writing game right now. She just
Mm-hmm.
kills it consistently. I don't know how she produces so much and such extremely high quality writing for Reason and
There's a bunch
Unheard.
of unheard ladies
Mm-hmm.
who are doing spectacularly. Actually,
Yeah.
I that's why I go to Unheard to read like from these like female writers who are doing
Oh, really? You don't think that
um
there are any good male writers on Unheard?
not on Unheard, I think. Or
Interesting.
maybe they are, I don't know, but I don't read them, but
Um, yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, donation people. Let's see. Oh, your trigonometry episode was awesome, and you looked really nice in it too. That is Aaron, who was it who gave money. So thank you,
well,
Sarah,
thank you,
for
Aaron. It
whoring
was
yourself out and giving
man,
us
it was
money.
yeah, it was outside and I was like a little chilly.
It was
I
outside.
didn't think it was. Yeah, we filmed it outside. I mean, I expected
That's
it to be
crazy.
indoors, so I was like dressed in like this indoors like home, you know,
You were wearing like a
not
camisole.
not slutty, but like mildly, like just like a little dash of inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
kind of a dress, and I was cold. Even
That's
though the sun was
bizarre.
on me, but then it was like I don't like being outside and like
Why would
recording
they?
outside.
That's crazy. That to
It was a
record outside. That
beautiful
makes.
little
Yeah, but was it
backyard. It
loud?
was.
Oh,
No, it was very peaceful. It was like the birds were chirping and the sun was
okay.
on you. So it was nice. If you were a guy and you didn't have any female problems and you weren't worried about your hair blowing in your face, or how your makeup's melting or anything like that, then it's great. But
Oh yeah, I see. So it
yeah.
was misogynist. Okay, they're
Yeah.
misogynists.
Mm,
Constantine and Francis, screw them. Okay,
yeah.
we're being told that we can run a live poll. That's your
That's
wheelhouse.
my
Any ideas
wheelhouse.
for it?
I don't know. I have so many poll ideas and they're so inappropriate.
Oh, somebody said this. They want to. Somebody in Nigeria. If you leave Islam, they arrest you and put you in a mental clinic and heavy doses of meds.
Yeah, a lot of the
Yeah.
yeah. No. I knew that
Um,
happened to somebody, but not in a not a Nigerian, but I know more than one person
yeah.
who got sent to a like a sanitarium. I don't know
Yeah.
what do they call it?
Um,
Mental health
yeah.
institution. Yeah.
Um,
Um.
somebody asks, "Are you too happy with where your careers have gotten you in this moment of time?" Hell no. What do you think we're doing here? God, that's answer question answers
Career. What does
itself.
that mean? What do you mean by career? I don't have a career. Other people have careers, but do you feel like what you have, Megan, is a career though? Like because I feel like career means there's a trajectory and you kind of like you're walking along a path. But are you walking along a path? Like is there a path that makes
Yeah,
any
I
kind of
do
sense
feel
with
I
your
do
life?
have a career, but
Mhm.
I had to pivot a few years ago.
Right.
So um
I don't feel like I had a career.
That's so
I don't feel like I've ever had a career because
Really?
the activism thing was just like it started because I saw a need, and then I started this group, and I never anticipated that it would become as, substantial of an institution as it actually ended up becoming. But I just built it bit by bit, like underneath me, um, was as like a volunteer thing, and then now not anymore. But it was not something I saw myself doing ever. I don't like activism per se. I
Nope.
don't even, not very much of an activist.
Activists are the people that you hate the most, it seems to me.
Modern day activism is not activism. It's a profession that has been so fully captured by, the, like, I don't want to say the elite, but it's like it's a bourgeois profession. Truly, it is not
It's a luxury.
something that,
it's a luxury profession. Perhaps.
There are people who are true activists who still exist, but they are operating completely, in spaces that are that the chattering classes do not look, and would not even recognize that this is an activist, because they think being an activist is going on Twitter, and they think that there's, you use words like social change and marginalized and oppression and all these, there's this activist speak. um I think it is actually a subject that at some point I would like to write a book on, like what has happened to activism and how it became a true, like this, a complex, like it just became an industry of its own. But true activism still exists, but it's just totally invisible. I know people who are operating these underground networks and like getting people to safe harbor from like Kenya and and they are doing that work, and they are no one's gonna know their names, and they're hoping that no one will ever find out who they are, because of the nature of their work, that
right,
these kinds of people
exactly.
exist in all.
If you have right,
If you poke around, if you're actually in the activism space and you're actually trying to do some work, you run into lots of arenas like this where what is happening is entirely underground and invisible to the kinds of people who, use the word Latinx, or
Latinx.
Latinx. Did you know that there are some universities who have an activist in residence? Did you know that?
That's a great
Stanford
idea,
is one of those universities.
Yeah.
I think Yale, like
wow.
the School of Public Health, I think has activist in residence. You
Actually,
get like a little stipend.
You know what? That could, if okay, I mean, by your definition of like an ideal a real activist, that actually could be a great thing, because kids do need a positive model for activism. I mean, they were they were, complaining. I think this was at Oberlin. And I'm sure this happens elsewhere, that they didn't have enough time for their activism, like that the students needed like less of a course load because they needed more time for their activism.
Activism is not a thing. It's not a hobby. You know what I mean? And that's what it seems like these people think it is. Like these young people think it is.
Well,
they think it's a hobby.
It's something about them. Like it's a
if your activism isn't costing you like a good, like if it isn't a pure gift that you're giving out into the world, then you should be suspicious of whether it is actually effective. And what exactly is it that you're doing in the first place. But then there's just a broader problem of 501c3s, which is like the status of a nonprofit, that it used to be that you would be like the Salvation Army, right? Like it used to be you are giving money to other people, like doing like something for them, building houses for them, whatever. And now you're going to get this like taxpayer funded free, tax free, your income's can be tax free. And then I don't know at what point exactly, and this is why I think I want to write a book about it, because something happened at some point, and now we can do, you can be a 501c3 even if you're just doing like educational work. You're educating the world about social
You just
issues,
have to make a case for how you're doing something.
Anyone can be, anyone and anything can be a 501c3. Now, having said that, of course, there's like lots of legitimate, there's a lot of legitimate organizations that are just doing that. They're educating the public. Many organizations I've worked with would go under that realm, go under that field. But if you think about it in just an incentive sense, um, their product is not measurable. The money goes primarily to funding people's jobs. Like not into giving money to others or turning it into coats so that they won't freeze or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not. It's a very different thing, and it is a way for the ultra wealthy to have a huge sway on public discourse, because you can just, if you feel very passionately about an issue, well, you give a lot of money to a 501c3 that will do nothing but talk about it all the time, and that's their whole job, is to make videos on this issue and to give talks on this issue. And I do this, right? Like this is what I do. So I think there are a lot of very defensible ways in which this vehicle is used, but it is also, at the same time, it must be a way in which, like, the uber wealthy can kind of turn public opinion, towards what they care about. Like Mackenzie Bezos can go around and give $1 million bombs to organizations that mean something to her, and she will end up having an effect on the country, and her voice is bigger than everybody else's voice, because so much of it is like going to social issues and social causes. And anyway, there's a lot to say about it, but the whole field is rotten. Like the whole field is.
Caitlin says, I feel like modern day activism has imploded into itself. Please write a book. Oh, God. I would love to see you write a book, because
everybody keeps wanting me to write books.
You'll be so miserable.
Oh my God.
You deserve to feel the misery that everybody else feels.
I have been an activist. Okay.
I just want you to hurt like I hurt.
There's no hurt like true activism, let me tell you.
I think the hurt of writing a book is worse.
You think?
Yeah.
We should ask Louise Perry, because she had like a kid around the same time she had a book. Yeah. And then I want to ask her, like, what was worse? Like what hurt more? Labor or like the
Good question.
The publication week? Like
yeah. Well, before we start to wrap up, I do think we want to at least touch on an unfolding story.
We do, right? Which we know nothing about. So
we know nothing about, but I know that people are waiting for us to weigh in, and we would really be remiss if we didn't. And that is the scandal at the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. So Trace Woodgrains, who is the brilliant researcher at BarPod, and who's also a law student, apparently.
We need a researcher. What the fuck? They have this is why they do so well.
Please.
Like,
you know what? Today's $199 is tomorrow's full-time free researcher. Okay. Right. So there's a scandal at the FAA has been moving on a slow burn through the courts for a decade, culminating in a class action lawsuit that, if you want to elaborate on, you can. But the upshot basically, it has to do with air traffic controllers and the way diversity coalitions within the air traffic control, unions or just the industry, and there's also an organization of Black air traffic controllers. There was an initiative to diversify ATC that has resulted in like an astonishing set of improprieties on the exam and the application process for.
So this exam, I think they just they came up with it and sort of threw it at prospective air traffic controllers, I suppose. And it's a biographical questionnaire. And so the lawsuit was, I think, by the students and all these people who had studied for this test and taking all these courses and actually passed them and did well, right. Only to have this test thrown at them kind of at the last second without any kind of warning, and then they fail this test. And
not getting hired. Competent, qualified people with apparently no shot of actually getting the job.
Right. And so Trace Woodgrains published this really great. I would recommend that you guys check out his Substack. This is a man,
or his Twitter at least.
This is a man, right? You're confirming gender, please. Like
Trace?
Yes. Yes. Tracy.
I don't know. I think his name is Trace. I don't know if it's short for Tracy.
Okay, well, we're saying his. We're using him.
He's a man.
Okay.
I don't know why it matters.
It doesn't matter. I just wanted to use the correct pronoun. Yeah, good Twitter follow, and he wrote about it on his Substack as well, and is going to continue to follow this. And I trust him more than I trust my research. That's for sure. My research consists of going on to Twitter, typing in trace wood grains, and seeing what happens on this case.
I mean,
but
I can't. Yeah, I mean, the details of this
are genuinely astonishing. But genuinely, but you know what? You know what? I love this up. I love it because I feel so vindicated when I say, I say to people, look, it's so much worse than you think it is. Like it's so much worse than you can possibly imagine. And and even I do this where I correct myself, and I think, no, Sarah, it can't actually be that bad.
Right.
Immediately after I've been betrayed, like I've been betrayed, and I think, oh, maybe this means it's worse. But like, no, it can't be. It can't be worse. And then it is, right? At some point, we just have to learn the lesson and imagine that the worst possible thing that they can be doing, they are doing, and nothing stops them. There's no rhyme or reason here. They will do anything that they can to get more people of color, and a little bit more,
I mean, and it's
and who can disagree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Except for racists,
right? I mean, this conversation started emerging over the last couple of weeks about DEI in the airline industry, and people were passing around memes like, if you saw this black pilot, you would really refuse to fly. You would get off the plane, kind of thing. I mean, it's not that simple, obviously.
It's not that simple, but at the same time, like if you look, here's what it is. Here's what it is. If you destroy objective standards, if you destroy objective criteria, and you're loud about it, and you go out of your way to defend the destruction of objective criteria, and you demand more and more of it, it starts earlier. Like the handicap we start giving people of certain that belong to certain social groups, we give them that handicap earlier, and then more of it, and then we end up with a Claudine Gay. I just feel
she's
like
she's training to be a pilot now. I heard. Did you hear that?
Well, good luck. Maybe her lowest grade though wasn't in science. I think she could be somebody.
One of the questions that they asked, okay, this is so complicated. Like basically there was an internal memo that was telling people of color who want to be air traffic controllers, people of color, I'm assuming not Asians, by the way, so whatever, but like they were, maybe, I don't know.
Not me either.
Not you. You should be one.
Asian, yeah.
But they were saying like, there's basically like ways of kind of coding yourself, moving yourself to the top of the pile, by answering certain questions in this particular way. And one of the questions was, what subject in school were you the weakest in, or something like that?
Yeah.
And you're, I mean, I can't even describe this because it's so nonsensical. It's so unstealth.
And it's the question out of, science, math, English, history, and social sciences, or physical education. If you answered science, that was the correct answer. Good job. Who knows why that was the correct answer, and you just got bumped up to the top of the lot.
So they really should ask, like, do you play chess?
They think black people are bad at science? Is that what they're? What is the implication?
I don't know. I mean, it's so
and not math,
racist for
but
starters.
Just science.
They should ask if you. I mean, air traffic controllers are chess players. That's the cognitive profile. Yeah, because you're moving stuff around all the time.
Yeah, but why not English?
No,
or history, political science.
I don't know that you need to know history. They really need to know art history and gender studies in order to be air traffic controller. No, I mean seriously, this used to be a really prestigious job, hard to get, and also like pretty egalitarian. There's a great book. It was or maybe it was just an article. It was the basis of that Billy Bob Thornton movie, Something's Got to Give, about air traffic controllers. Um, I think the article was in the New York Times Magazine back in
Who's
like
Billy Bob Thornton?
Oh my God, Sarah. Sling Blade. Sling Blade was an air traffic controller. Okay, that is how much it
That's
demarred
not
the profession.
like a black.
No,
that's different. That's
it's
just
about
Blade.
it's about a special person. No, so I mean, air traffic controllers used to be like a lot of really smart, mathematically oriented, amazing spatial relations people, and not even mostly men. A lot of women did it, and they could come from anywhere. Some of them were working class.
I think military is a route, though.
Some of them, yeah, and because they used to literally. I mean, as recently as the '90s, they would literally move the stuff around on pieces of paper. Like it was computerized to an extent, but they had boards in front of them, and each little piece of slip of paper represented a plane flying. Like, you're lucky that you didn't fly in the 90s. So I mean, it's this incredible kind of like cognitive feat that was going on. And obviously, Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers in the 80s when they went on strike.
Baller move, actually.
I mean, yeah.
One thing.
But I used to listen. You used to be able to listen to the air traffic on the radio channel when you flew, and especially on United. I remember they always had it on United. I don't know that they had it on other airlines, but I used to listen to it all the time because I love aviation, and I love planes, and I'm just fascinated by it. So yeah, you would listen to it all the way across, and there's different control centers around the country, because there's not only the control tower at the airport, but there's control centers just like in Kansas and different stops along the route. So they'll actually just sort of hand out. Controllers will be talking to the plane for several hundred miles, and then they'll hand it over to the next airspace. And just to listen to them talk, it was amazing, because they had all their jargon, and they say like Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta kind of stuff, and there was just this way that they spoke, like very clipped kind of military, a lot of Southern accents. The pilots often had military backgrounds, and just the way that they spoke, I found mesmerizing and pretty professional. And every once in a while, you would hear the air traffic controller trying to contact a plane or something and not getting an answer. Like, "Are you there? Drama. Copy. And I'm like, and then he would answer. But yeah, I mean, I hadn't been following. I didn't get the memo that this job had deteriorated to the extent that it has, and I noticed people have been sort of making jokes about air traffic controllers looking at their phones instead of working. I don't know.
It's you can't even make it up. We can't make it. What else is there to say? How are we gonna satirize this?
Is there a worse job to have incompetent people at? Other than surgeons?
And if they are doing it here, right? If this is happening here, it's happening everywhere. And there's a lot more of it happening everywhere because we haven't noticed. It's just, I don't.
What do you mean? What about in Africa? They're trying to hire white guys.
Not there. That's going to be here. I meant in the sense that in all fields, in all domains in American life, there's something like this happening. If there is ever a disparity that somebody doesn't like, there are attempts to redress it, to fix it, and they will use whatever they can at their disposal, including just blatantly like horseshit questionnaires like this, and should be insulting. I can't.
Yeah,
it would. I would be so insulted if I was a Black person trying to get this job, and then finding out that I made it through this questionnaire, and then after that finding out that this questionnaire is written out specifically for a certain kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. it's incredible. And there's no, I feel like there's just no stopping this train until we say no to all of it. We just have to say no to all of it. There is no such thing as having a little bit of DEI.
No half measures.
There's no half measures. We just have to say none of it is acceptable, period. Like, we have objective standards and you meet them or you don't. And anytime you have objective standards for anything, like for this job, you have to be 6 foot tall. Well, that limits some social groups from not entering the job, or you have to lift this much. Well, that precludes all pregnant women.
More Asian women in basketball.
But there are always going to be positions in which there are objective standards that are end up applying unequally to different social groups. That's always going to happen. I mean, I was thinking about all the different ways, like now that I'm a mom, like all the different ways I'm screwed and all the different, pathways in life that are like not open to me, but no one cares. No one's like, oh, we need to make sure that
like
moms also, well, like if you go out at places, everything closed. Everything doesn't. Some things don't even open at till 10 p.m. It's like I'm asleep by then. Like
wait. You can't go to nightclubs. Is that what you're
saying?
Like
nightclubs are like they're like way night. They
what
don't
are you
mean
talking
night
about?
night.
Wait. I'm curious.
Not that I'm ever going.
We have some questions that we have.
Not that I'm actually going. I just mean that like they open. Some of them open at like 11 p.m.
That is not discrimination. You think that you're being
discriminated against?
It's what I'm saying.
Okay. It's what I'm saying. If I wanted to just apply that logic uniformly throughout society, I would find that there are constantly places in which people with different circumstances or social backgrounds or ethnic racial backgrounds or immigration statuses or whatever, like they're going to be disparately impacted, and it does not make sense to utilize that as a standard for anything.
We have a couple more questions before we.
Oh God, but we gotta go. I know
we gotta go. Again,
I mean, it is 9:30 my time. I am gonna pass out like a clock.
But people have given us generous donations, so we.
Oh my God, but they're just gonna. But somebody stop them because then they're gonna keep doing it.
This is. I know this is on the tip. This can be answered really easily. Border wall. Are you for it or against it?
You know what's frustrating about like in Texas, like every time I go, filled with Californians. I hate it. And it is changing up. Like my hometown is like nothing like it was. Like the whole neighborhood's changed. There's like yoga studios around. There used to be like kolache places, like really good ones. And now there's like this, in this yoga station, we take donations. Just pay whatever you want to.
Wait, you're saying they should build a border wall to keep.
They should build a border wall. I think there should be some kind of
we need to
make it so that the Californians
a northwestern border wall to keep out the Californians. Okay,
Latinos I don't mind. I think they're great. But the Californians are extremely annoying, including Latino Californians. I'm sorry. If you're this is where you're from, you can't come in. You can't cross the border.
I think that's a very good answer. Here's another one, very easily answered. Can religion be, quote, reformed? If yes, how? If not, why? Just real quickly.
I don't know. I mean, that's a big topic of like given lots of like actual talks about it. Depends on the religion. I think.
Okay.
That's sorry. I'll give it more.
Okay.
Maybe we'll give another.
We'll think about these things. Okay. Is there anything
Craig
they need to know?
Sent $10, and we got 10 Australian dollars. Hey.
Wow, is that a lot or less?
I think you already mentioned this in a previous pod, but any further thoughts on Ayaan Hirsi conversion? What the fuck? Yeah. We did talk about it. Maybe we should release it to like the public. I think because I think it was paywall.
Oh, we also talked. I know somebody also asked about what we think about like the fat positivity movement, and we just did an entire episode on that. About or most of it an episode about that. We talked about Kate Mann's new book. So
yeah, well, the person that said the religion question, they sent $30. They sent like a lot of money.
Thank you.
So we will give it like.
I will convert to that.
It depends on the religion. It actually is a question, but.
Okay.
What do you mean by reform? Like what are you trying to get out of that religion?
30 Malaysian dollars. Wow, those came from Malaysia. Thank you. Look at that.
Thank you. Hey,
we're international.
Thank you
Okay.
to our one Malaysian fan. Look at that. That's
It's
so nice.
$6.35 is 30 Malaysian. That is
Okay.
great.
That is
Still
great.
an odd number.
Now, but then the odd numbers present problems for
Sarah,
us, guys.
you know what? If it's an odd number, it rounds up for Sarah.
Great.
So, okay.
Perfect.
All right. So they should rate and review.
Rate and review. Yeah, well, I think we are due for more religion talk at some point because there's just a lot of interesting things going on. We wanted to talk to Constantine about it.
From Trigonometry.
From Trigonometry about it because he's had a lot of interesting thoughts about coming back to religion a little bit, but as an atheist, as a secularist. But he's busy. Mm-hmm. But we will get him on the pod.
Yeah, and we have exciting guests coming up.
And we have some exciting guests coming up who are religion people. Yeah. So stay tuned. Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks
everyone.
For the comments.
Thanks for joining. Look at that.
Fun. We'll do it again.
First live recording. All right. Take care.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Bye.